Yeah, my name's Enzo, and in March this year, I wrote an article for News Decoder as part of a school project. And yeah, I had a very good time writing this article. I got to learn a lot from very nice and interesting people, and I'm very happy with the product, and I hope those who read it are also happy with the outcome.
No, it was a great article. I really enjoyed reading it. My name's Jeremy
Thank you.
Solomons. I'm originally from England, from Manchester. And yeah, I support Manchester United, but Enzo, we have Casemiro. Um, and I was a foreign correspondent for Reuters news agency years ago in Hong Kong, New York, and Frankfurt. But I still write nowadays, and I've written different articles for News Decoder. And the one that kind of brought us together was one I wrote about safety, but it brought in the issues around home, belonging. So similar kind of issues from a different perspective to your article, Enzo. And I'm now based in Kigali, Rwanda. I think for everyone, it is a fundamental need, beyond things like survival, is a sense of home, belonging, well-being, part of a community. I think it's a basic social need, and it's something that, particularly during COVID, where some people, well, most people were at home, some people were at home on their own, and that brings up the issue, Enzo, you mentioned about loneliness, which I'd love to explore a bit further. Sort of the loneliness, the isolation of being on your own, being in a new community, not speaking the language, those kind of things. The other side was also some people were a little bit too much at home with too much family. And so that can be another whole issue. But I think, primarily when we're talking about moving, whether it's voluntary or not, whether it's as a refugee, whether it's Enzo, and I'd love to hear, more about your story, which wasn't so much in the article about why your family moved, I think, from Brazil to Switzerland. I'd love to hear more about that. So, when you're moving in a new country, new environment, new language, new food, you mentioned that in your article, Enzo, about, people basically eating comfort food, still eating Turkish food or whatever, Ukrainian food. And that's something, even I miss. I mean, I've lived in 9 different countries now for extended periods, but there are still certain things I miss. So from England, where I grew up, I still miss steak and kidney pie, which you don't get anywhere else. Or from Italy, I still miss fresh Parmesan cheese. It's a little thing, but it's still something. When people come to visit, that's the first thing I ask them to bring is fresh Parmesan cheese, because you can't get it here. So little things like that can be very important.
Well, the task that we had was mostly about writing about life in Switzerland, and we were supposed to be foreign correspondents, but I didn't really get that feeling. I didn't really have that feeling where Switzerland is home for me. It's not what I want to write about because it's not 100% where I belong. I'm not Swiss, and so it was hard for me that time to find a topic to write about, which had to do with Switzerland. And I really, at first, I wanted to write about Brazil, which is where I spent most of my life. But then, yeah, I was talking to my mother, and we were talking about exactly, this origin and identity, and what it feels like to move and have to adapt yourself to different cultures, and also learn new languages. And how do we actually feel like we're home? What is home? And that's always been a question that I've liked. What is home? And I think we can get different answers when we ask it to different people from different cultural backgrounds. And it's a very open question, and that's what I actually enjoyed about it. And so I decided to write the article based around this question: what is home? And how can we turn a place that is not our home at first into a place where we feel safe, where we feel like we actually, fit in. And if that's even possible, because for some people it might not be. And so that was something I found quite interesting.
But what would make Switzerland 100% home for you? Is there any way Switzerland could do that, or will a part of your heart always be in Brazil?
I'd say a part of my heart is in Brazil. Part of it is in Japan, where I also made a lot, of good memories. And so it's kind of, divided between different places. I don't think there's a way that Switzerland would be 100% my home. I think that'd be impossible because, I'm not from here. I have family in Brazil, I have family in other countries too. And I actually feel like it's at least for me, it's not really about the place. Also, it's about the people you're surrounded with. Things like languages, and because you're not, even if you learn a new language, I'd argue that you're not. It won't be as comfortable for you speaking that language as it would be to speak your native language. And that's why I think, a country, at least Switzerland, will never be 100% my home. But nevertheless, it is a country which I absolutely adore. And I want to spend as much time here as possible. And, I love the people that I have here. Well, I have my family here with me. We have friends here. Uh, of course, school too. I really like the people in my school, my classmates, and I feel like being surrounded by people you like actually makes you feel better.
No, it is. I mean, there's people, and that's the conclusion I came to at the end of my article. Is in the end, it's the people, the community that you make wherever you are, whether you want to be there or not. And I've seen that myself. I've adjusted better in certain communities, certain countries than others. For me, Germany was the hardest place to adjust to, just in terms of temperament, lifestyle, system. I found it to be very rigid, inflexible for me. Not only did you have to recycle the bottles, but you have to recycle them in the same place, in the right place, the green bottles in the green basket, and etc. And actually, the German part of Switzerland, I lived in Zurich as well, was a bit similar to that. I'm not very good at following rules, so that didn't work so well for me. But and also personally, my fiance was in New York. I was in Frankfurt. I saw more of her family than she did because they're from Frankfurt originally. So it can be personal circumstances. It can be the system, and then how do you adapt to that? And the question is, for you, obviously, still you're 17. You still have to obviously follow certain rules and things and what your family says, but maybe in a year's time I'd be interested to see, what your thoughts are if you're thinking about that yet. About okay, so where will you make your home once you graduate and maybe go to college or start working or travel the world? What's your thoughts about home for the future?
I mean, I always tell my family I like to stay close to them because that's where I feel like I belong, actually. It's not, even when we go back to Brazil to visit the country, it's not like that is home for me, but it's like when I'm, having dinner with my family, when I'm laughing with them, that's when I feel the most comfortable, actually. And that's when I feel the happiest. I feel like I'm not going home, but home is always with me, actually, in a sense, even though some parts of it are, spread out across the globe. I think the best part and what makes me me is still, following me wherever I go.
Mm-hmm.
I'd actually like to Jeremy's answer to that question because I read your article. I really enjoyed both of them, but also the article called "Navigating a World of Preconceptions." That's one of those that you guys sent me. I think it was absolutely wonderful. The quotes that you use, I think they matched the topic perfectly, and I really enjoyed them. And they got me thinking about my own experience. And I really like to hear because you moved to different countries, different continents, and how this process was for you.
Thank you for your comments. And I'm still, in a way, I never feel, like you say, you're not 100% at home in Switzerland. I felt at home for a time when I lived in Italy. That was in my late 20s, early 30s. Professionally, it was an interesting time, trying different things, setting up the first private career counseling firm in Italy. So sometimes it's related to work, sometimes it's related to people. So I was in Texas for many years. I was married there, have a daughter who's still there. So it's very much around being a father and a husband there. But I got divorced. I left there 5.5 years ago. Now in Rwanda, likewise, I've recreated a third family. Again, like you said, that's the most important thing to me. That's the thing that gives me joy, gives me a sense of belonging, that whatever we do, wherever we are, hopefully we're together. We try to travel together when I have to go somewhere for work. So, I've been reminded, because I've had that at different stages in my life and career, how important that is, that human contact, sense of community. And, here I'm very visibly different. In somewhere like Switzerland, I can blend in a lot easier. In the US, I can blend in. It's a very multicultural society. Here in Rwanda, I'm usually the only white guy in the room. If we go to a wedding or something, or even a family event, I'm usually the only white guy. And so that can be alienating. But what I find is people are very gracious, they're very inclusive. Sometimes you may have 4 or 5 Rwandans who are speaking in Kinyarwanda, the local language, and then when they see me or I come in, they'll stop and they'll start talking in English or French. So that's a way of including and making me feel like I belong, which I appreciate. The other side of that, the not so pleasant side, is that obviously my wife is Rwandan. We have a biracial child who really looks like a mix of us. He's not black, he's not white, somewhere in between. Yet, because he's lighter than his mother, he's called white, Mzungu, which is a term here for a white person. And so that I don't like, because it makes us feel that they're denying his identity, and that he's just started school, but we very consciously chose a Montessori school with a lot of other biracial or Métis kids, as they're called here, so that he would feel more belonging. Obviously, at 2, it doesn't matter as much, but as he gets more vocal, as he develops friendships, so that he's not made to feel that he's the perennial outsider because he's mixed race, because he doesn't quite fit the category. So that's something we're very conscious about in terms of not just belonging, but kind of fitting in. And you mentioned your article, acculturation, adaptation, and you can try to fit in, but the risk is sometimes that you deny a part of yourself in trying to fit in. And I'm sure Enzo, in school, there's that pressure sometimes to fit in with your peers. The nice thing is, I think you're in a fairly international environment. So I'm assuming there are a lot of people in your position. It's not all Swiss. It's not like you're in a local Swiss school or something where you would perhaps stand out far more. So that idea of being able to find your area, find your niche, whether it's with people who love maths or the people who love football or whatever it is, that I don't think changed, because that's a human nature thing. You want to find people with similar interests, similar goals in life, if you're working, similar ethics, values, those kind of things. I think that's something, again, wherever you are, you seek out those people.
I think we could start talking about when I went to Japan. I went to an international school there, and there were lots of Brazilians there, lots of people from, I think there were at least 10 people from 10 different countries there. And so I had friends from Canada, from Turkey, from Brazil, and especially those friends from Brazil. We were really close, and so there was still this feeling of being home. I was always they came from the same cultural background as I did, and so it didn't feel like it was that big of a change. But when we came to Switzerland, there weren't lots of Brazilians here or people who had the same background as me, and so I feel like I had to adapt myself to the environment here. I had to switch schools a couple of times here because of the school
Wow.
system. And so that, that makes it even more difficult to make friends and to fit in, especially at school, because, at my age, I feel like fitting in at school is a very important part of your life. Making friendships that maybe will last. To be completely honest here, I have amazing teachers, especially when we're talking, for example, my interests, for example, mathematics and physics. I have an amazing math teacher, an amazing physics teacher, and we always chat and about uh, everything actually. And all of my teachers and are amazing, and especially my classmates too. I couldn't have asked for better classmates. They make me feel very comfortable. They make me feel like I can make mistakes when I'm trying to speak the language because that's also very difficult. But I feel safe around them, and I'm very, very grateful for them. Yeah, so I feel like even though I said that, I'm not 100% home here, it doesn't take away the fact that I'm very happy here, because there are many aspects, to and being feeling home. But I feel like that one is I'm 100% fulfilled here. Really, I'm very, very happy here. It feels safe, and I really wouldn't change a thing right now.
And how many years have you been away from Brazil, not living in
Well,
Brazil?
around 6 now.
Okay.
So
Now, have you heard about re-entry shock? Do you know about that? Has anyone ever spoken to you about that?
no, I've never heard about that.
So in terms of cultural adaptation, that some people that move never have the chance to go home, or I've made the choice. I've not lived in England since I was in my early 20s. So I've made that choice. But for you, you may at some point choose to go back to Brazil, but there's a lot of research being done on this. Just Google re-entry shock, reverse culture shock. There's different terms, a lot of articles written on it. And basically, when you go home, like you said, you go home to visit, that's one thing. You're there for a few weeks, month. It's all fun, parties, seeing your grandparents, that kind of stuff. When you move back, then suddenly you're kind of getting integrated back into a society that, on the one hand, seems very familiar. The people that your grandparents, uncles, whatever, friends, even. Yet, what is difficult is that, and you may, look a little bit older, but essentially the same Enzo. But what is different? You are a different person because of your experience of living in another country or countries that are very different. That's changed you. You're not a typical Brazilian teenager anymore. So if and when you go back, that can sometimes lead to think, well, but this is my country, but people don't care when I talk about them getting the bullet train down to Kyoto. They don't know what the hell I'm talking about. If I talk about having raclette, in Switzerland, oh yeah, okay, that's a big deal, but it's not as good as Brazilian food. So that can be sometimes, and that's something just to be prepared for, that the country may seem the same, but you're not the same. So, and that would apply to anywhere you go. It's just a question of expectations. In that, if you decide, for example, you're going to move to Italy after Switzerland, then it's going to be different again. You have to learn a new language. You go back to Brazil, you think, well, yeah, I mean, this is going to be easy to move back. And sometimes it is, but very often it can be challenging. And they say research, I've not seen the latest research, but the research, I remember being at a conference one time and we talked about this, and the consensus was once you've been out of your country about 7 years, which is what it would be for you when you graduate, then it makes it more challenging to go back. For me, I'm a lot older. It's been a long time. It's way too long. I would never go back. But to visit, sure, I have a sister in London, but to live, it would be hard. And my parents are no longer alive, and my sister's my only family there. But it's just something to think about for the future in terms of how you create a future home and belong back in a place which you thought you belonged in, but you would belong in a different way, and you would have to adjust to, again, if that's what you choose to do.
we did have to write as part of a school project, so it wasn't like we had much of a choice. But we actually got to choose what we wanted to do. If we wanted to, be foreign correspondents for a week, if we wanted to go into filmmaking for that week. But German is still not. I'm not 100% comfortable speaking German still because it's a hard language that I have to admit. And so the opportunity to write something in English, it felt like I had to do that because because one aspect of not getting to speak your language with people, your mother tongue or a language that you're fluent in and you're 100% comfortable, is that you can talk as much as you want, but I don't feel like people will understand exactly what you're feeling and what you want to, tell them. That is a barrier. There are barriers. And for example, I feel like sometimes when I'm not speaking my languages that I'm fluent in, it gets really hard to speak my mind, and which is very important. Communication is very important for people, and so I felt like, I had to do that project. And the fact that I picked this topic, it all fit perfectly together because I got to speak about an experience of mine. And yeah, it felt great actually to finally be able to speak my mind. I felt, that's how I felt. And it was also good that I got to learn about other people too, and how they actually shared some, the same experience actually with, not being 100% comfortable speaking a language. And that was, really, at times you get emotional, at times but I was just, really happy to be writing that article. And the process of writing it was, it was obviously difficult, because it was the first time we were doing a project like that. And so we didn't have a lot of time. Sometimes we had to, put in some extra hours. But but I feel like I learned a lot, and that's what I'm taking from this week. I learned I got to talk to many journalists actually, and I felt like I was a journalist for a week because actually I felt like I had something to tell people, and that was the way to do it. I got to speak my mind, but other people got to read about it, and that made me really happy actually.
That's nice in terms of that. And, just telling your story, a lot of journalism is about telling a story, whether it's your story, whether it's someone else's story, as you did in the article. And that's what I like about writing for News Dakota. I'm not just saying this. Is that I've always been encouraged to share bits of my story. And when I was your age, a bit younger, I remember in an English class I had to write some appreciation of a Shakespeare play, which I didn't like, I didn't enjoy, and I got a zero grade, which I was usually a good student, but that kind of, oh, okay, I better start writing properly. And it was really only university for me, where I got involved with the university newspaper, and my first assignments were standing in the freezing cold in the rain watching football matches and writing usually 300-400 words. I couldn't even, in those days we had typewriters, and this is how long ago it was. And usually if I had to go back and do it right away, I had to wait half an hour because my hands were so cold I couldn't use the typewriter. So, and we didn't have voice recorders or anything those days. So that was my introduction, but I actually really enjoyed it. I loved it, and I could pretend to be, a sports reporter, like, the people I would read in The Guardian or whatever. And I've just always enjoyed the written medium. I've tried other things. I've tried radio. I was actually a radio correspondent in Hong Kong when I first moved there. It's not my favorite way of expressing myself. I think I express myself more in writing. And what I like about writing is that unless you're under a real deadline, is having the time to think about it. So I'm writing something now about my thoughts about the recent elections in the US, and I've got a lot of thoughts about that. And I've been kind of just collecting my notes and my thoughts together for the last 10 days. And then tomorrow I'm going to write the the article, it's not to be published. It's just I'm going to send it to 200 friends around the world, and I'm going to lob in a few bombs. And if either of you are interested, let me know. I'll send it to you as well. And it's really just my personal views, but the way I construct it, I enjoy that process. Oh yeah, I want to mention that, or I want to include that quotation. When you can get to the stage of enjoying it, that it's not a burden, that's what I think with anything, any form of communication or anything in life, that's where you want to be, that you're actually enjoying it. And the old cliche is that, you know, any career, real career is never working a day in your life, that you just love what you do. And I do, I enjoy what I do. I don't just write, I do a lot of other things, but essentially, you know, when I am writing, it's because it's something I'm interested in, whether it's for News Dakota, whether it's for myself or my friends, family. It's just, and even emails. I love constructing emails when I have time, and thinking about, you know, well, what do I want to say, and what's the best way to say this, and will somebody get my humor? It's always difficult in an email, particularly in a text. You know, emojis are a great thing, but you can still get into trouble with emojis. So that's all part, to me, of the writing process, and I love it, even if sometimes it's very frustrating. And the worst thing for me is when people don't respond. I'd prefer somebody to come back and say, Jeremy, that, sorry, I don't know if you have to clear that out. Or even worse, you know, they just you know, agree with everything and say, well, really? Have you read it? But not saying anything, that's the worst thing. You know, I just, oh, please let me know. What do you think? You know, and so again, you're a minor, so you need to be, you know, protected in certain respects, but to have the passion, whatever it is, whether it, you know, you said you love maths and physics, maybe you'll develop a passion for writing as well. You know, that would be fantastic. So hopefully it's not just the one time. Hopefully you'll have a chance to write about other things as well.
I really liked the quotes that you used, Jeremy, in your articles. There's one by, I think, Aristotle at the end of Navigating World of Preconceptions. But one that I found really intriguing. I want to get it right here. You can outdistance that which is running after you, but not what is running inside you, which is apparently a Rwanda a proverb. And I really enjoyed that, and it got me thinking a lot about my own experience too. And and that's what I found, one of the things, one of the things I found most interesting in the recent days, and I've been thinking about it ever since I read it. And yeah, it's so true, I'd say, and very intriguing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the thing. I work with these senior leaders, you know, around the world in big banks, institutions. And what astonishes me is that even, you know, being in high positions with a lot of power, that very often either they don't know themselves very well, or they don't try, they shut themselves off, they become blocked, they're in their corner offices, shut off from people all day. And that's the piece that I find, you know, when they get stuck, very often they come to me that they're stuck, they're not happy. And, you know, that's where we always start, is that kind of self-leadership, self-knowledge, self-management. You know, where are you? Where are you in this process? What is important to you? Well, you know, I'd really like to spend more time with my family. Well, so why are you in the office 20 hours a day? You know, so it doesn't matter, you know, when you talk about success, that can be financial, you've got a nice house, nice car, etc. But inside, what does success mean? Is it just, you know, waiting for the next promotion? So I was working with somebody in Netherlands the other day, very successful, and now she's at the stage where she's a senior manager. She could possibly get the next move up to being a director, but she'd be working even more hours, be away from her family. She has two young kids, travel more. And, you know, my question very often, is it worth it? And, you know, she said, I'm not sure. So we're, you know, going to continue the conversation. So for me, you know, that is very important, you know, when we're talking about identity, belonging, etc. And for you, Enzo, you know, I'm envious because you have so much in front of you. I mean, I'm not going anywhere yet, but you have all these new experiences, and I would love to see where you are in 5 years' time. I don't want to know now, but in terms of that, it's great that you love your family and being with them. And what are you going to do with your life? That's very exciting to me. So I really, wish you well in that. And I'd love to see, if you write any more articles for News Dakota, I'd love to see them. It's been absolute pleasure meeting you.
You very much. It was very nice to meet you to hear about your experiences. You mentioned writing for News Dakota. I was thinking about, trying to get to pitch something before actually getting an email about this interview. So yeah, I'm looking, and I'm really looking forward to writing again. It was a wonderful experience, and this meeting today has also been wonderful. I've learned a lot about very interesting people that you are. And yeah, I'm really happy for being involved in this project.